Welcome to this week's edition of Travel World 95. I'm Stephen Pickford. On today's show, we'll be looking at the north of Boston area, an area often overlooked by many Montrealers as they head to Boston proper or to Cape Cod. We'll discover the unexpected when travel journalist Peter Solvay drops by to chat later. But first, country music and country music tourism. As the popularity of the format has increased over the past decade throughout North America, more and more country music fans have decided to travel closer to where country music performers are to see their favorites live on stage. Joining me now to explore this surge in interest is veteran Montreal broadcaster Jim Connell, host of Country Profiles on our sister station CFCF 12. Welcome to Travel World, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Well, now to put everything in perspective, to what would you attribute the aforementioned increase in country music's popularity in North America?
Oh, it's a change in styles, I think, of country music to a certain extent over maybe the last 5 years. They've taken more from rock and roll, if I'm allowed to make that comparison. A lot of the new country music, the hot new country as they call it, sounds like a lot of the 60s rock and roll stuff does. It's very simple, very straightforward, has a rock beat to it, and it's attracting a younger crowd. And once you start attracting a younger crowd, it's going to grow and grow and grow. And then you get somebody like Garth Brooks who comes in and decides, hey, I know how to market this stuff. And I market it just like the rock and roll bands market it.
Right.
Big concerts, showy concerts, and it's just taken off.
Right, really taken off. Now, someone comes up to you and they say, I'm planning to spend a few days in Nashville. What would you include as musts in their itinerary? Of course, you always start with the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah, if you're only planning on spending a few days in Nashville, let's say you're doing a long weekend or maybe a 3-day or something like that, probably the best bet is just to go right to the whole Opryland complex. It's just outside of Nashville. It's not downtown anymore. And they've really, the Gaylord Entertainment people have really put together a marvelous facility. The Opryland Hotel is just a wonderful place. It's unbelievable when you see it. It's huge. They've got, I think, 2.5 acre jungles indoors in the hotel. And of course, you're right there. So if you only have 3 days, you don't want to do a lot of traveling around the area. You're right next door to the Opryland theme park, which will keep you busy for at least a day, if not more. You're right next door to the Nashville Network, which produces a lot of shows that have live audience participation, so you can go over and sit through the tapings of a couple of shows for TNN. And you have the hotel itself, which is full of marvelous show places and bands playing there. It's you never have to leave.
Right, you really don't have to leave, and as we mentioned, it's around 8 miles northeast of the city, 10 miles northeast of the city, but it's really a self-contained complex. They have that property with 2,800 rooms, or it's going to be 2,800 rooms.
Yeah, they're adding to it right now. They're
adding
in the middle of
to
construction.
And we look at the Grand Ole Opry. Again, it's on site there, but prices are reasonable for the performances.
Prices are reasonable for the performances. You'll see a lot of the legendary names of country music, and in some cases going back 25, 30, 40 years. These guys join the Opry, and unless they move to Branson, which we'll talk about later, they stick around and they perform at the Opry regularly, maybe 2-3 times a week. Very seldom do you get more than one act on the show that would be one of the new country artists. You might see a Joe Diffie. Garth Brooks might show up once a year, but you're going to see more of the old standards country music players.
Right, and basically you have two shows on Friday and Saturday night, so they're big time, and they run around $20.
And it's a wonderful theater. I mean, it was built, I think, in '76 when they moved out of the Ryman, which was a downtown location, and they really spent a lot of money and made a wonderful facility. It's a great place. Basically,
as well, it's very accessible for the fans. You don't have all this security that you can't go and talk to the performers. People are flashing pictures. I mean, there's security, but it's behind the scenes. It's discreet. You aren't. The performers are more accessible to the.
But that's a general thing in country music. I mean, you'll see somebody do a concert anywhere, and usually afterwards they'll come out and sit on the edge of the stage, and they'll, people will line up and talk to them and chat with them. They'll sign autographs. They don't sort of, finish the show, zip backstage, jump in a limo, and disappear. They're very much out there talking and having contact with their fans. And yeah, the same situation exists at the Opry. There's an area afterwards where you can meet all the performers and take pictures with them. And it's a lot of fun.
Right, a lot of fun. Also in the Nashville area, of course, if you only had a couple of days and you basically spend all of your time in the Opryland area, but I think also, which again differentiates Nashville from Branson, is you can also see and do a lot more just in the general area.
Yeah, you can. A lot of it has moved out to around the Opryland area because obviously that's a big draw, and as you said, a 2,800 room hotel. There's a lot of other clubs and whatnot that have moved from downtown locations out to the Opryland complex or near the Opryland complex. I mean, right across the street there's the Nashville Palace, which is a restaurant with a show. It's the place where Randy Travis got his start, actually. Legendary bottle washer at the Nashville Palace. Downtown is not what it used to be, apparently. The actual downtown core is gone to seed, I guess, a little bit is the expression. They're trying to rebuild it. They have an area called 2nd Avenue, which has been renovated over the last few years and turned into a really nice area of restaurants, nightclubs, all kinds of nightclubs, not just country music. So if you're going there just for country music, you can find that down on 2nd Avenue. There's a huge place called the White Horse Saloon. I don't know what to compare it to, maybe in Montreal, the Metropolis, except it's probably 2 or 3 times the size of Metropolis. Beautiful venue for bands to play. They have live music and they have lots of dance area. But you'll also find non-country music attractions down on 2nd Avenue. Thinking of Montrealers going down there, you'll even find discos. I mean, there's a place called Mare Bulls, which would compete with any disco in Montreal, any nightclub in Montreal. Great restaurants.
Yeah, lots of fine eating in the area too. That
Absolutely.
Sort of that southern cuisine. It's really really popular and again reasonably priced.
There's even a good sushi place down there.
There's everything in Nashville. Also, Nashville is an accessible destination, and as we sort of lead into Branson, the comparison between the two is Nashville from here. It's a mini hub for American Airlines. You've got Northwest, US, all the carriers are flying there.
Yeah, it's no trouble getting to Nashville at all. I know people who've even driven down from Montreal. They say it's a lovely drive. It takes a couple of days. But you're going through nice country, you're going through Kentucky, you're going through Tennessee, and this time of year, springtime specifically, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Right. And that's, again, now as we talk about Branson, which is the sort of the new kid on the block, if we can use that term, with regards to the country music scene, really building up in the last few years, its problem is its accessibility from Montreal. It's not easy to get
it's
to.
difficult. You know, you get to Springfield, Missouri, and then you're left with the question, okay, and it's about 70 miles away from Springfield, you know, how do I get from here to Branson? Now, if you're very rich, you take a Learjet. The artists do that.
Right.
The tourists drive down. A lot of bus tours go through the Branson area. Again, it's pretty country if you feel like driving. I don't know that there's any sort of regularly scheduled commuter airline service in there yet. There certainly wasn't 2 years ago.
Right. A lot of group tours in that market.
Absolutely. That's you go to Branson and you see nothing but big buses full of people, because that's how people end up there. They, 60 or 70 people go on a tour of country music hotspots, and they spend a few days in Branson. Branson's an interesting thing because it was a very small town. And the infrastructure, the road system, the sewer system, it hasn't kept up with the explosive growth that's happened there. So you end up at 7 o'clock at night when the shows are starting, you have a 4-lane highway, and all of the theaters are built along basically one 4-lane highway that sort of loops around the town of Branson. And at 7 o'clock when the show is on, when the shows are on, you can spend an hour in traffic going 3 blocks.
Now let's see what Roy Clark has to say about Branson and some of the other things there are to do in the area.
Awful lot of our tourists that come on tour buses. In fact, that has become a phenomenal business now. And it's a godsend to a lot of people who don't like to drive great distances. And people come from all over the country. They can sit back and relax and sign up, and everything is taken care of. Their motels, their meals, and their entertainment. So that's a very big business now.
There are now a lot more ways of getting around Branson than there used to be. It used to be you were either in your own vehicle or on a motor coach. Now there are various shuttle services, the trolley service that's available. We have, of course, the helicopter tours of Branson. We have an excursion train that doesn't actually bring people into Branson, but it creates excursion opportunities both to the north and south out of Branson. There's a lot more activity on the lakes opening up. We've had the paddle wheel boats on Lake Taneycomo. This year there will be a dinner boat added on Table Rock Lake. A lot of new means of transportation in and around Branson.
There's a lake, there's fishing, and there's hunting, and there's camping, there's horseback riding. Anything you want to do on that side of it, outside the theater stuff, all around here. You can go forever, skiing. My kids were into that, of course. Golfing, miniature golfing, bowling, driving those little carts. I mean, you can't get bored unless you really just want to say, I want to get bored. There's a lot of stuff to do here.
I don't think I've really experienced a third of what is really here. Just from the entertainment side of view, I've only seen maybe, I don't know, 10% of really what's here. And the things for our kids, I've only experienced a small portion of what's here. And Natasha's always saying, let's go do the bumper boats. I want to go to Silver Dollar City. I want to go see the Osmond show. They sing. And so it's just, there's so much here. I'm not tired of it at all.
Great music, great entertainment, great travel value in Nashville and Branson. Jim Connell of Country Profile, Saturday evenings at 6:30 on CFCF 12. Thank you for joining us and bringing your perspective on country music tourism to our viewers today.
It's been fun.
Now let's head over and see what's going on this week in the Travel Corner.
Hello. My name is Robert Jada. I'm a Canadian Custom Officer at the Hemmingford Land Border Crossing. You know, questions are invariably asked of my colleagues and me, and we're grateful to Travel World 95 for this opportunity to answer some of them. The most common questions are easy to answer. Yes, the washrooms are open, and no, it doesn't snow in Canada in the summertime. But some answers are a little more complex, especially the one about what a returning Canadian can bring back from trips abroad, be it a week on the Riviera or an afternoon at Plattsburgh Beach. Essentially, Canadian residents can bring back whatever they want, whenever they want, as long as they are ready to pay the duty and taxes, and as long as those goods are not restricted by any government regulations. A touring car bought in Germany, for example, could be a problem in that that car will not comply with Canadian standards on safety and emission. Similarly, a grand piano bought in Austria, may not be admissible if the keys are made of elephant ivory, since Canada is an active participant in the protection of endangered species. Government regulations also restrict the importation of goods manufactured by child or prison labor, as well as some pharmaceuticals, offensive weapons, and some pornography. But let us presume a simpler vice, cigarettes and booze, the ever-popular question. Let's say you spent the afternoon touring northern New York State and you have happened upon and bought a rare bottle of wine, a Chateau Chazy 95, and you bought a couple of packs of Marlboro to enjoy with your treasure. No problem, as long as these goods are declared at the border and as long as you are willing to pay the rather high duty and taxes on your indulgences. Because a good rule of thumb for any goods you plan to purchase abroad is to know before you go. We would rather have you stop in on the way out than to have to stop you on the way back in. Because here's a shocker. We are there to help the honest traveler. In fact, our departmental mission states that above all else, we serve the public. And Prime Minister Chrétien and President Clinton recently signed an agreement which accelerates the growing freedom of goods along the 49th parallel. But this relationship, like the border itself, is a two-way street. Full and complete declarations, voluntary compliance, remain your best assurance of our best help. As an example, let's take a happy scenario where you've spent 2 weeks in England and you have bought, let's say 2 lovely lawn ornaments in the shape of Buckingham Palace. You paid the Canadian equivalent of $150 a piece. This is where Canada Customs is very glad to give you something for nothing. After a 7-day absence from Canada, Tuesday to Tuesday, for example, or Saturday to Saturday, you are entitled to $300 worth of personal goods. That's $300 with no duties, no taxes, no levies whatsoever. Even if you purchased for more than $300, you get the first $300 free, and you pay the lowest applicable duty rate on the excess portion. This freedom from duties and taxes can be claimed once a year. So on your lovely lawn ornaments, you have no duty, no tax, nothing to pay. There is another exemption of $100 after 48 hours abroad. Both of these exemptions can include your cigarettes and your alcohol, but there are limits on the number of alcohol and cigarette products you can bring in. 1.14 liters of wine or liquor, 8.5 liters of beer, 200 cigarettes, 400 grams of tobacco, 400 tobacco sticks. There is another incidental exemption which after 24 hours permits you $20 in goods. On this exemption you cannot bring in any alcohol or any cigarettes. It doesn't sound like much, but it's free, and these days that's worth repeating. 7 days, $300, 48 hours, $100, 24 hours, $20. But please remember that these are only your free limits. You can actually bring in whatever you want in the whole wide world, as long as they're not restricted and as long as you're willing to pay the duty and tax on them. Keep in mind that the duty and tax is always lower than the penalty for not declaring. On the way out of the country, if you have valuable items, please stop and identify them with us on our very popular little green card. See how giving we can be? Thank you.
North of Boston, it is the quintessential New England destination. From the history of yesteryear to tranquil beaches, from meandering country roads to the excitement of summer resorts. Joining us now, just back from the North of Boston area where he's been working to compile a guidebook on the region, is Montreal journalist Peter Sauvé. Welcome to Travel World.
Thank you, Steve. Nice to be here.
Well, North of Boston is a very generic term. I mean, even Fort Chimo is north of Boston, so could you perhaps zero us in on where exactly north of Boston is and what areas it encompasses?
Sure. Well, briefly, the area from Boston, the city of Boston, north to the New Hampshire border, is the region that's known as the North of Boston. It's roughly 40 miles north of Boston, that area. It encompasses 2 geographic areas, and included in this region, approximately 50 towns and several small cities, including the city of Salem, Massachusetts, which is probably the best-known city in the region. It's about a 5-hour car trip from Montreal.
Right, you'd head down the 89 into Concord, New Hampshire, and then hook up to the 93, and that would be around 5 hours. And also, if our viewers were going to go down there by air, make it a quick trip down there, you could fly into Boston and just run half an hour north.
Sure.
How long a stay would you recommend somebody to go down there for?
Well, I found that I could see and do a lot in this area over 3 or 4 days. It's a great place for a long weekend type of vacation.
Okay, now let's say you just arrived there and you'd be arriving at the northernmost port of the North of Boston area, which would be around Lawrence.
The town of Lawrence, that's right.
And you start your touring there. What is there to see in Lawrence?
Well, Lawrence is on the Merrimack River. That's about 25 miles north of Boston. This is a city, it started out, well, actually its roots go back to 1655. It was a mill town. And around the 1900s, it was one of the world's major textile centers. So it's largely a mill town industrial history. It was one of the founding historical venues for the American labor movement. There was a very important textile strike there in 1912. So that's the history of it. I mean, this whole area is rich in history, culture. It's a significantly, historically and culturally diverse and significant part of the U.S.
Right, so you also have, like, in the Lawrence State Heritage Park, you have boarding house from the era, and they've reconstructed some of the canals.
That's right.
The mill clocks, and so you can really get a feel for the area as it was in the to late 1800s. So.
Sure, there's a whole display at the Lawrence Visitors Center. It gives you a feel of what it was like to work in those conditions, the 12-hour days, 10-year-old laborers working. I mean, the conditions were quite different from today. So you sort of experience that part of history as well as that geographic area.
Right, and then you finish up in Lawrence, and you've had your fill of history, at least for that day. So you head down to more the Cape Ann area and Rockport and Gloucester, those cities.
Yes, Rockport, the Cape Ann area is a northern Cape in Massachusetts. We're familiar with Cape Cod, but north above that, going out into the Atlantic Ocean, is an area called Cape Ann. And it includes largely the cities of Rockport, Gloucester, and Essex. A very, very beautiful area, very scenic. The city of Rockport, for example, this is an artist's colony, essentially on the Atlantic Ocean, and travelers always love to shop. It's a great area for shopping. Rockport started out as a quiet fishing village until artists discovered it after the Civil War in the United States around 1865. It's very picturesque. It has an 8-mile coastline, and it is the quintessential New England town, I found. Many of the artists who live here run their own galleries, and there's one region in Rockport called Bearskin Neck. Now, this is a very small area, very quaint, very popular art and shopping center. It has about 200 small and fascinating shops, boutiques, everything from lobster specialties to gifts to helmet strudel is one place I saw there. Just everything was in there. And that is about a 3-hour walk through that area. Just terrific, just to see.
Right, you really have to devote at least 3 hours to get a good feel for the area. And as well, Rockport is where many people would know where motif number 1, the fisherman's shanty, which they've seen in many pictures and magazines for years and years. This draws in people just wanting to see where that famous picture was taken.
Absolutely. It's a very pleasant area. There's no traffic. There's a law forbidding neon signs there. And Rockport is also a dry town, so that gives you a little more time for sightseeing. The seafood, of course, if you love shopping, this is a great area for you. Seafood lovers will feel right at home there. I went to a place called the Peg Leg Inn and Restaurant, and a very traditional New England place consisting of 5 early American homes overlooking Front Beach. Just beautiful, so scenic.
Right, you have a great clam chowder and the lobster dinner, and then you're ready to just head down the road and maybe take one of those whale watching expeditions.
The whale watching expedition, well, you can't go to New England without going on a whale cruise, but a whale watching cruise, that is, but very, very important. You have to have a strong stomach because out on Cape Ann, it's around the city of Gloucester. This is not too far from Rockport. It's a hubbub of activities: sightseeing cruises, deep sea fishing charters, whale watching excursions. These are going on all the time. So if you go on a whale watching cruise, what they do, these things generally run about 3 hours. You can get one going a whole day. It takes you right out 13 miles out into the Atlantic to some of the feeding areas. Well, there's one, the Stellwagen Bank feeding area. It's about 110 feet deep, 13 miles out into the Atlantic, and they guarantee that you will see whales. You want whales, go on a whale.
They guarantee it.
Well, the Yankee Fleet Whale Watch, a cruise that I was on, guaranteed it. You'll see dolphins, porpoises, various types of whales as well. Very nice.
Right, and it doesn't cost too much. I think it's around $20, $25.
About $20 US, something like that. Yes. Then from there, there's another town still on Cape Ann, the town of Essex. The whole maritime tradition, obviously, of New England is reflected in any travel that you're going to experience around there. It always keeps coming up. There's a great museum in Essex, the Essex Shipbuilding Museum, as a matter of fact. It exhibits models, plans, books, prints, whatever, and they're open May to October.
Okay, and also in Essex, if you're finishing up your day in Essex, it's the home of Woodman's, where they really invented the fried clam over 80 years ago, and it's been named like one of the best restaurants in all of New England.
That's right. It's and it's a unique setting too. It's a dining in the rough setting. It's a few stories, and it's kind of not exactly a fast food seafood restaurant, but it certainly has an atmosphere all its own. I haven't seen anything like that here.
Right, so you finish up your meal there and your stuff, so of course you maybe finish the day and you spend it in a nice bed and breakfast or motor lodge that's in the area. Very
romantic places, affordable too. A lot of bed and breakfasts around the Cape Ann area, Rockport. etc.
Right, so it's great for a romantic romantic weekend in New England.
Absolutely.
Then going from romance into something that wasn't so romantic over 300 years ago, and that's the Salem area with the whole tradition of the witch trials.
Absolutely. Well, this is the most prominent city, the most well-known city in the north of Boston area, the city of Salem, Massachusetts. Everybody does know it, yes, because of the 1692 witchcraft hysteria. Over 150 innocent people were imprisoned, 20 of them were killed. But Salem today has a population of about 38,000 people. Again, we're talking 15 miles north of Boston now to give you a fix on where it is. Salem each year, 900,000 visitors annually. And what I found was Salem was a very easy city to get around.
Right, you can take a trolley bus. They have an all-day trolley bus.
They have the Salem Trolley, which is a 1-hour narrated tour of Salem. Stops at 16 points. Very good. But the best time to visit Salem, if you're planning a trip, is the week before Halloween, as you can well imagine. Salem, of course, it has a lot of events that pertain to the whole history of witchcraft and that.
Of course, you can also get witched out with the witch museum, the witch hunt, the witch house, everything to do with witches. There's around 4 or 5 places in various degrees of authenticity and reconstruction.
Absolutely,
so you basically have to pick which one you want to visit.
You have to, exactly. You have to know which witch is which, as the old expression goes. It's it is a little bit overexploited. The commercial aspect of the witch. I mean, it is the witch city after all, as you'll see in the sides of the police cars, and I think even some of the taxis at the witch city. But I found the best museum was the Salem Witch Museum. It's very popular. They offer a multimedia presentation in a variety of languages: Japanese, French, German, Italian, and Spanish.
But if you've finished with all the witching things, the great Maritime Museum there, they reconstructed the wharf. It's also the home of Nathaniel Hawthorne's House of the Seven Gables.
That's right.
And the Peabody Essex Museum, artifacts from around the world, really world class. And again, after we've had our cultural fix, we head up to Salisbury Beach, Newburyport, beautiful beaches, beautiful wildlife.
Terrific. 5 miles of pristine, white, sandy beaches. It's great. And again, if you didn't have the chance to go whale watching or deep sea fishing in Gloucester, you can do this in Newburyport. Salisbury Beach is about 7 miles south of Hampton Beach. It's very popular in the summer. There's a big family entertainment center there with amusement parks.
Lots of great things to see up there, really. Peter Sauvé, you've certainly enticed me to travel to the north of Boston area this summer to personally experience what they have to do. And if you want some more information on the north of Boston area, you can call the North of Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, 1-800-742-5306. That's all the time we have for this week on Travel World 95. From all of us here, thanks for joining us. I'm Stephen Pickford. Till next time, happy traveling.